Thursday, October 1st, 1942. Dear Kitty, I got a terrible shock yesterday. Suddenly at 8 o'clock the bell rang loudly. Of course, I thought that someone had come, you'll guess who I mean. But I calmed down a bit when everyone said it must be some urchins or perhaps the postman. The days are becoming very quiet here. Lewin, a small Jewish chemist and dispenser, works for Mr. Crowler in the kitchen. He knows the whole building well, and therefore we are always afraid that he'll take it into his head to have a peep in the old laboratory. We're as quiet as mice. Who, 3 months ago, would ever have guessed that Quicksilver and would have to sit still for hours, and, what's more, could? The 29th was Mrs. Van Daan's birthday. Although it could not be celebrated in a big way, we managed a little party in her honor, with a specially nice meal, and she received some small presents and flowers. Red carnations from her husband. That seems to be a family tradition. To pause for a moment on the subject of Mrs. Van Daan, I must tell you that her attempts to flirt with Daddy are a source of continual irritation for me. She strokes his face and hair, pulls her skirt right up, and makes so-called witty remarks, trying in this way to attract Pim's attention. Pim, thank goodness, doesn't find her either attractive or funny, so he doesn't play ball. Mummy doesn't behave like that with Mr. Van Daan. I've said that to Mrs. Van Daan's face. Now and then Peter comes out of his shell and can be quite funny. We have one thing in common, from which everyone usually gets a lot of amusement. We both love dressing up. He appeared in one of Mrs. Van Daan's very narrow dresses, and I put on his suit. He wore a hat and I a cap. The grown-ups were doubled up with laughter, and we enjoyed ourselves as much as they did. Elli has bought new skirts for Margot and me at Bijenkorf's. The material is rotten, just like sacking, and they cost midnight florins and 7.50 florins, respectively. What a difference compared with before the war. Another nice thing I've been keeping up my sleeve. Elli has written to some secretarial school or other and ordered a correspondence course in shorthand for Margot, Peter, and me. You wait and see what perfect experts we shall be by next year. In any case, it's extremely important to be able to write in a code. Yours, Anne. Saturday, October 3rd, 1942. Dear Kitty, there was another dust-up yesterday. Mummy kicked up a frightful now and told Daddy just what she thought of me. Then she had an awful fit of tears, so, of course, off I went too, and I'd got such an awful headache anyway. Finally, I told Daddy that I'm much more fond of him than Mummy, to which he replied that I'd get over that. But I don't believe it. I have to simply force myself to stay calm with her. Daddy wishes that I would sometimes volunteer to help Mummy when she doesn't feel well or has a headache, but I shan't. I am working hard at my French and am now reading La Belle Nivernaise. Yours, Anne. Friday, October 9th, 1942. Dear Kitty, I've only got dismal and depressing news for you today. Our many Jewish friends are being taken away by the dozen. These people are treated by the Gestapo without a shred of decency, being loaded into cattle trucks and sent to Westerbork, the big Jewish camp in Dront. Westerbork sounds terrible, only one washing cubicle for 100 people and not nearly enough lavatories. There is no separate accommodation. Men, women, and children all sleep together. One hears of frightful immorality because of this, and a lot of the women, and even girls, who stay there any length of time are expecting babies. It is impossible to escape. Most of the people in the camp are branded as inmates by their shaven heads and many also by their Jewish appearance. If it is as bad as this in Holland, whatever will it be like in the distant and barbarous regions they are sent to? We assume that most of them are murdered. The English radio speaks of their being gassed. Perhaps that is the quickest way to die. I feel terribly upset I couldn't tear myself away while Miep told these dreadful stories, and she herself was equally wound up for that matter. Just recently, for instance, a poor old crippled Jewess was sitting on her doorstep. She had been told to wait there by the Gestapo, who had gone to fetch a car to take her away. The poor old thing was terrified by the guns that were shooting at English planes overhead and by the glaring beams of the searchlights. But Miep did not dare take her in. No one would undergo such a risk. The Germans strike without the slightest mercy. Elli, too, is very quiet. Her boyfriend has got to go to Germany. She is afraid that the airmen who fly over our homes will drop their bombs, often weighing 1,000,000 kilos, on Dirk's head. Jokes such as, he's not likely to get 1,000,000, and it only takes one bomb, are in rather bad taste. Dirk is certainly not the only one who has to go. Trainloads of boys leave daily. If they stop at a small station en route, sometimes some of them manage to get out unnoticed and escape, perhaps a few manage it. This, however, is not the end of my bad news. Have you ever heard of hostages? That's the latest thing in penalties for sabotage. Can you imagine anything so dreadful? Prominent citizens, innocent people are thrown into prison to await their fate. If the saboteur can't be traced, the Gestapo simply put about 5 hostages against the wall. Announcements of their deaths appear in the paper frequently. These outrages are described as fatal accidents. Nice people, the Germans. To think that I was once one of them too. No, Hitler took away our nationality long ago. In fact, Germans and Jews are the greatest enemies in the world. Yours, Anne. Friday, October 16th, 1942. Dear Kitty, I'm terribly busy. I've just translated a chapter out of Belle Nivernaise and made notes of new words. Then a perfectly foul math problem and 3 pages of French grammar. I flatly refuse to do these math problems every day. Daddy agrees that they're vile. I'm almost better at them than he is, though neither of us are much good and we often have to fetch Margot. I'm the furthest on of the 3 of us in shorthand. Yesterday I finished the assault. It's quite amusing, but doesn't touch Jupe to Huel. As a matter of fact, I think Sissy van Marksveld is a first-rate writer. I shall definitely let my children read her books. Mummy, Margot, and I are as thick as thieves again. It's really much better. Margot and I got in the same bed together last evening. It was a frightful squash, but that was just the fun of it. She asked if she could read my diary. I said, yes, at least, bits of it, and then I asked if I could read hers and she said yes. Then we got on to the subject of the future. I asked her what she wanted to be, but she wouldn't say and made a great secret of it. I gathered something about teaching. I'm not sure if I'm right, but I think so. Really, I shouldn't be so curious. This morning I was lying on Peter's bed, having chased him off at first. He was furious with me, not that I cared very much. He might be a bit more friendly with me for once, after all I did give him an apple yesterday. I asked Margot if she thought I was very ugly. She said that I was quite attractive and that I had nice eyes. Rather vague, don't you think? Till next time. Yours, Anne. Tuesday, October 20th, 1942. Dear Kitty, my hand still shakes, although it's 2 hours since we had the shock. I should explain that there are 5 fire extinguishers in the house. We knew that someone was coming to fill them, but no one had warned us when the carpenter, or whatever you call him, was coming. The result was that we weren't making any attempt to keep quiet until I heard hammering outside on the landing opposite our cupboard door. I thought of the carpenter at once and warned Elli, who was having a meal with us, that she shouldn't go downstairs. Daddy and I posted ourselves at the door so as to hear when the man left. After he'd been working for a quarter of an hour, he laid his hammer and tools down on top of our cupboard, as we thought, and knocked at our door. We tummed absolutely white. Perhaps he had heard something after all and wanted to investigate our secret den. It seemed like it. The knocking, pulling, pushing, and wrenching went on. Nearly fainted at the thought that this utter stranger might discover our beautiful secret hiding place. And just as I thought my last hour was at hand, I heard Mr. Cufuus say, "Open the door, it's only me." We opened it immediately. The hook that holds the cupboard, which can be undone by people who know the secret, had got jammed. That was why no one had been able to warn us about the carpenter. The man had now gone downstairs and Cufuus wanted to fetch Elli, but couldn't open the cupboard again. It was a great relief to me, I can tell you. In my imagination, the man who I thought was trying to get in had been growing and growing in size until in the end he appeared to be a giant and the greatest fascist that ever walked the earth. Well, luckily everything was okay this time. Meanwhile, we had great fun on Monday. Meep and Hank spent the night here. Margot and I went in Mummy and Daddy's room for the night so that the Van Santens could have our room. The meal tasted divine. There was one small interruption. Daddy's lamp blew a fuse, and all of a sudden we were sitting in darkness. What was to be done? There was some fuse wire in the house, but the fuse box is right at the very back of the dark storeroom. Not such a nice job after dark. Still, the men ventured forth, and after 10 minutes we were able to put the candles away again. I got up early this morning. Hank had to leave at 8:30. After a cozy breakfast, Meep went downstairs. It was pouring, and she was glad not to have to cycle to the office. Next week, Elli is coming to stay for a night. Yours, Anne. Thursday, October 29th, 1942. Dear Kitty, I am awfully worried. Daddy is ill. He has a high temperature and a red rash. It looks like measles. Think of it, we can't even call a doctor. Mummy is letting him have a good sweat. Perhaps that will send his temperature down. This morning Meep told us all that all the furniture has been removed from the Van Daan's home. We haven't told Mrs. Van Daan yet. She's such a bundle of nerves already, and we don't feel like listening to another moan over all the lovely china and beautiful chairs that she left at home. We had to leave almost all our nice things behind, so what the good of grumbling about it now? I'm allowed to read more grown-up books lately. I'm now reading Eva's Youth by Nico van Zuchtelen. I can't see much difference between this and the schoolgirl love stories. It is true there are bits about women selling themselves to unknown men in back streets. They ask a packet of money for it. I'd die of shame if anything like that happened to me. Also, it says that Eva has a monthly period. Oh, I'm so longing to have it too. It seems so important. Daddy has brought the plays of Goethe and Schiller from the big cupboard. He is going to read to me every evening. We've started with Don Carlos. Following Daddy's good example, Mummy has pressed her prayer book into my hand. For decency's sake, I read some of the prayers in German. They are certainly beautiful, but they don't convey much to me. Why does she force me to be pious, just to oblige her? Tomorrow we are going to light the fire for the first time. I expect we shall be suffocated with smoke. The chimney hasn't been swept for ages. Let's hope the thing draws. Yours, Anne.